Hello and welcome to the Real-Esteem Podcast. Today is February the 17th, 2018. I'm your host, Patrick Tabor, and today on the Parenting Edition, I'm going to tell a story from my family about perseverance. I'm going to try to condense this as much as I possibly can since we're talking about perseverance. In Hebrews 10:37, it says, "For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised." So my wife and I always wanted kids. And, our first try at it, we had a miscarriage. And it was very heart-wrenching. It was very difficult for us. Those weeks felt like months and years. It was very difficult for us to really get through that process. But we tried again, and we had our first child almost 20 years ago. And it's been a blessing. We've had 3 kids total, and our situation or story really revolved around the medical field or whatnot. We had a cesarean with the first child that we did have, and then with the second child we were told that we would have to have a cesarean again, which both of those occurred. And my wife's dream after those circumstances occurring, and they were difficult, both of the surgeries were kind of rough, and recovery was really rough also. So after that, her dream became to have a natural birth. So we went and talked to our doctors the next time we were going to get pregnant. We worked with them and tried to figure out, what the process was for a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean. And we did not know how the process was going to go. We didn't know God was going to take us down this long, curvy road and teach us so many things in the process, but he did. So, like I said, we sought the advice of our doctors and different people and said, how should we go about this? And they were like, it's possible, it can happen, but there are these negatives that can happen too. So we listened and followed the directions, but we saw that they were leaning more to being scared of attempting that because people are so concerned about lawsuits and something going wrong. And I understand that, but I'm a man of faith. My wife is a woman of faith, and we had to really figure out what is this thing when God said we can have, but it seems like every time we go through this process, we can't have. So anyway, we decided we would go and pray about this, and we did. And, through the process, God had told my wife, hey, you do everything else at home. Why not this? And we thought it was really wild, really crazy. We were just talking about home birth, and we did a little research and did some reading, studied some journals, medical journals, and we were just like, wow, this is crazy. So we thought, well, after we've spoken to our doctors, we thought about birthing centers or midwives and doulas and started reading about all of that stuff and seeing, would somebody or a doctor would potentially, with a nurse, midwife that would be guided by the doctor, were they willing to do something like this? So in the state of North Carolina, a midwife had to be under the direct direction of a doctor. And in any other state, it's different in the states surrounding North Carolina. In, I think, Virginia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, you were able to have a midwife as opposed to a doctor. But in North Carolina, that midwife would get a misdemeanor if they were to show up at your house for a birth. And the doctors don't do house calls anymore. And I understand that, the legalities and the risk involved. But we heard God clearly in Isaiah 66:9 when he said, "Shall I bring you to the point of birth and not cause you to bring forth? Says the Lord. Shall I, who cause to bring forth, shut the womb, says your God?" I think I've always believed that this was rhetorical in the sense that God was saying, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and we have to believe. Well, what does this have to do with perseverance? Well, through the process, when God says he's going to do something, you have to wait, or you have to go through the proper channels, or you have to check everything out, or you have to research. You have to grow. God's not going to just do something for you and not allow you to put in any time, effort, or work. So back in Hebrews, when he said, "For you have need of endurance," God was teaching us how to press through to achieve his goal. We had to press through. As crazy as it was to us, we thought this was just over the top, ridiculous, but we did hear what God was saying. And for us, we had to listen, regardless of what we wanted to do. We had to really listen, and it was a great experience. We literally ended up having a situation where we had the hospital ready and waiting for us to come. We went through the whole pregnancy without doctor support and whatnot. And, I know everybody kind of thought we were wild and crazy. We couldn't really tell everybody about how we were doing this or why we were doing this. We were just trying to follow God's guidance. I'm going to cut this short if I can, just to make a long story short. My wife went into labor. She was to a point where we couldn't literally move her. She got to the bathroom. She was able to crawl to the bathroom. And we had read emergency birthing standards and what the process and procedure was. We followed that. My wife birthed a 9.6 pound baby, which is bigger than our other two kids. And she had no tears. She had no issues. I had the ambulance come to take her and the baby to the hospital while I stayed behind and cleaned up. And finally, I got over to the hospital, was able to talk to the nurses, the nurse midwife, the doctors, and they asked me, a litany of questions about how the process went. And surprising enough, I got compliments, I got reviews, I got people saying, "Wow, you did everything by the book. You followed the manual to the T. Everything went well. Your baby is very healthy. Your wife is doing great." This was a awesome process. They were like shocked, but on the other hand, they were patting me on the back about what we did. So, as crazy as that may sound, everybody's not against you. Everybody doesn't follow the standards that the world sets. And sometimes God makes you go outside of the box, and God consistently makes us, this household, go outside of the box. I'm glad to say that was 9 years ago, and our child is doing well. All three of them are doing great. We followed God and trusted God, but we had to learn how to persevere. You can't get what God has promised without having to do something, some type of effort, some type of work. And, it's up to us. It's up to us to believe. So in Mark 9:22 through 24, it says, "And it has often cast him into the fire," talking about the father whose son was struck with a demon, and he would try to hurt him. And it says, it would cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. "But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." That is the key. That is what faith is really about. How will you ever know if you have faith if you're never put into a situation that requires faith? It's not this mandy-pandy easy stuff. It's when the situations are hard. The part of that circumstance that I was in was daunting to me, because that was a time where I was at the end of me. I had done all that I could do. I couldn't help my wife relieve her pain. There was no drugs involved. She had no medications or anything to take to help. We tried a birthing pool to see if it would relieve some of her pain, and it did not. So I have to pray. I had to literally get in the floor and pray and say, "God, please, did we make the right decision?" And you know what? It was an awesome experience, but it was a very difficult and stressful situation for us. But we saw what God was doing. He was stretching us. He was wanting us to truly believe him all the way to the end. Sometimes we get to the point where we just can't take anymore and we stop believing. But that's not the way God works. He wants you to learn how to continue, to persevere, to believe. John 15:7 says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. I hope you got something out of this today. Be blessed, grace and peace.